Welcome to the Diet Fiction Podcast, the show that tells you the truth about diet, nutrition, and health to educate, motivate, and inspire you to live a healthier, more fulfilling life. And here is your host, Michał Sawierski.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Diet Fiction Podcast. I'm your host, Michał Sawierski. I'm a documentary filmmaker, author, and wellness advocate. And in this show, we expose several misconceptions and myths about diet, health, and nutrition. Join me every week as I interview some of the most forward-thinking and disruptive health experts on the planet to help educate, motivate, and inspire you to live a healthier and more fulfilling life. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I'm really excited to be here recording this new episode of the Diet Fiction Podcast, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Angie Sadeghi. And before we jumped into that, I just wanted to give you a couple updates. My first film, Food Choices, just became available on Amazon Prime. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch Food Choices for free now. And unfortunately, our Netflix contract, our 2-year exclusivity contract with Netflix, it's expiring this month. And I know it sucks. We're really sad to leave the platform. It has done a lot of great things for us, but unfortunately, it's not going to be on Netflix anymore, but it will continue being available on dozens of other platforms, the biggest one being Amazon Prime, and also it will start on Food Matters TV on November 23rd. So yeah, still widely available, but unfortunately no more Netflix. When it comes to diet fiction, my upcoming documentary have some really exciting news. The film just became available for pre-order on iTunes. So if you guys want to pre-order it, it's available out there. I'll leave the link in the show notes below. And actually, if you guys know that you're going to watch the film anyway, if you can pre-order, that will be a big help for us because we're trying to get to 500 pre-orders. And what that will do is it will allow us to be on top of page 1 of iTunes in the documentary category when we launch on January 1st. So the more pre-orders we do, the better we sort of will perform in the iTunes algorithm, and it will place us higher on the results. So that'll be a huge help. If you guys know you're going to watch the film anyway, if you could pre-order, that'll be awesome, and really appreciate your support. So January 1st, still the big launch date. We'll be giving you guys some sneak peeks on our social media, so stay tuned. Visit us on Facebook, on Instagram, or visit our website dietfictionmovie.com. So anyway guys, I really hope your day is going great, and I'm really excited today because, as I said, we have an amazing guest, and her name again is Dr. Angie Sadeghi. Dr. Angie is a gastroenterologist that focuses on preventive medicine for plant-based nutrition. She has an incredible story of overcoming disease that she shares in this episode, and she also talks about how she went from being an overweight, tired, depressed person to becoming a fitness model, full of energy, vitality, winning awards, appearing in films, and helping a lot of people along the way, and all of that in a very short time. I think Dr. Angie sets a great example not only to medical doctors, but to all of us, showing that if we put our minds to it, we can overcome almost any difficulty in life. And then Dr. Angie also talks about the gut microbiome and how it influences our health. And also she also dispels a lot of the myths out there about gut microbiome. I really hope you enjoy it. And this episode is brought to you guys by the Food Choices Academy, an online platform that I co-created with Dr. Pam Popper. We offer several courses in plant-based nutrition. And just a quick reminder that for my listeners, I created a coupon code so you can get 15% discount on all courses. You just have to type in the coupon code PODCAST at checkout to get the discount. So visit foodchoicesacademy.com. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started with Dr. Angie Sadeghi. Good morning, Dr. Angie. Thank you so much for being in the podcast.
Good morning. It's my absolute pleasure, Miha.
Fantastic. How's your day going so far?
It's going very well. I live in Southern California, the most beautiful place on earth, I think, and no complaints on my part.
Fantastic. So, Angie, can you tell us a little bit about your health journey with food and weight loss? I mean, you were not always a fitness model, right? And what changes did you make in your life to get where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. It was quite a journey for me, Miha, and I'm really happy that you asked this question, and I'm very happy to be able to convey my message and share my personal journey, because I hope that my story motivates others to eating healthier and living a healthier lifestyle. So when I was younger, I didn't have such a good diet. I was suffering with several health problems, including eczema, which was severe. I had high cholesterol. I was overweight. I was fatigued, and I was a little bit borderline depressed. And I was just going through life thinking, if I died tomorrow, so what? Be it, and I didn't really have this passion for life, to live or thrive, sort of the opposite of who I am today. So I didn't know exactly why. I just basically went through life every day doing, doing things, going through the routine of life, and never really enjoyed myself. I was self-conscious about being overweight. Like I said, I had severe eczema, which was literally disabling for me and contributed to such a poor quality of life, because I was itching all the time, literally morning till night, during the night. It was so bad that at night I had to take Benadryl to be able to sleep. So I'd take about 50 milligrams of Benadryl, which is over the counter. It's an anti-itch medicine. I would take that every night, and it would affect me the next day because I would be drowsy at school when I was in medical school, but I had no choice, because if I didn't sleep, I would be a mess. So I had to choose between taking these medicines to sleep to stop the itch and being able to function. So I continued taking Benadryl almost every single day of my life. I also had to put corticosteroid cream. This was basically a steroid cream on my skin, all over, on my elbows, on my arms, on my legs, because I scratched myself so badly that I would bleed. So I'd have to put these corticosteroid creams to heal and basically suppress the eczema. But unfortunately, I wasn't getting to the etiology of the eczema. I was just using Band-Aid treatments, and I went to several doctors, and they just told me, we'll continue doing what you're doing. We can give you a stronger anti-itch medicine and give you stronger corticosteroid creams, but that's about it. And so I went through life very disappointed, thinking, man, why do I have to be so unlucky that this disease is like killing me every day? It's just contributing to such a poor quality of life. So I just kind of continued doing that because I didn't know what else to do. I went to an allergist. Even the allergist didn't help me, and I just kind of gave up, and I just did what I did, use medicines. One day, about 5 years ago, I was at a health conference, and at that time, I realized that I wanted to lose weight. That was my primary purpose. I wanted to basically get healthier, to lose weight. And the speaker said something about, if you're trying to lose weight, what are you doing eating dairy? And he was addressing everyone, not me. But I was like, oh, I didn't know dairy causes weight gain. At that point, I didn't have, even though I was a medical doctor, I didn't have such knowledge of nutrition as I do now. And I had no idea there's so much saturated fat and so much basically so many calories condensed in dairy, because look, it's like pretty much baby calf growth fluid, and it's supposed to blow up a little calf into a large cow in a short period of time. So it started clicking. I was like, oh, well, then I'll stop eating dairy. At that point, I was a vegetarian, so I went on a whole food plant-based diet. And the way I started this whole food plant-based diet is because that day my cousin said, as a doctor, you should watch this documentary called Forks Over Knives. And so I did. And I would say this documentary forever changed my life and changed the way I practice medicine. I watched that documentary, and not only did I stop eating dairy at that point, but I also went on a whole food plant-based diet, which is healthier. And I can tell you within a short time, I'd say about a week, I stopped itching. For the first time in my life, I stopped itching, and my skin started healing. I had really bad pustular eczema, like pustules all over my hands, where I was so embarrassed to shake people's hands. Those went away. I stopped using Benadryl, and I stopped using my corticosteroid creams. And literally, I was like, this is miraculous. I had never seen such an effective therapy in my life for me or my patients, where I became such a believer. And it became my mission to spread the message, and the message of whole food plant-based, to everyone, my patients, my friends, my family, my loved ones, my own son. And so that was a very pivotal point in my life. But I can tell you, not only did my eczema went away, my cholesterol went down, my fatigue went away, my depression went away. I mean, so many good things happened. And if you want to avoid the talk about the health factors, which are boring to some young people, let me tell you, aesthetically, I shrank my waistline in no time. My body fat percentage dropped significantly, and I approached 10% body fat, and I gained muscle, where 9 months later, I was able to step on a bodybuilding competition stage. It's called a bikini fitness competition. And I went from chubby, nerdy looking doctor who was ill to healthy, happy, best version of myself on stage, January of 2015. And it was the most incredible feeling, because the way people looked at me changed, the way I felt changed. I can tell you, I would go to the gym and people would think that I'm a fitness model, not a doctor, which was quite the compliment. So I can tell you, if you're listening and you're obese, overweight, depressed, have any diseases, I can tell you, I can put my name on this, that the whole food plant-based diet will help you. So give it a try.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. Okay, so dairy was the first thing that you removed from your diet, right? And I mean, it's amazing how many conditions are related to dairy. You know, the more you dig into it, the more ailments people sort of find related to this type of food, right?
Yes, dairy is full of saturated fat, and it has a sugar that is called lactose, which is not digested very well by humans. In the gut, as a gut expert, I can tell you that we don't have that many lactase enzymes to digest lactose sugar. So this sugar goes into the gut and it doesn't get digested very well, and it creates havoc. So some people have the enzyme left over well into their adulthood, but most people lose the ability to digest dairy by losing the enzyme. For people who can still digest the lactose, they're not home free. There are a few proteins in dairy which are highly inflammatory to the human body, and most patients I know are allergic to it, and that causes a lot of inflammation. I have seen people with eosinophilic esophagitis. This is a really bad condition, and the body attacks the esophagus. I have seen colitis. I've seen all kinds of diseases due to the protein in dairy. In children, I can tell you, my son, for example, gets really bad mucus production in his sinuses, and he starts sneezing and gets extremely congested in his sinuses. He would go and have like 50 sneezes in a row, and he would have to use a Kleenex box a day if he ate dairy or even accidentally ingested dairy. He gets an eczema rash like how I did, and that's the allergy that comes from the proteins in dairy. Furthermore, not that we need any more problems with dairy, dairy is full of saturated fat. So I see a lot of patients here who have an acidic gut, and they get a lot of gastroesophageal reflux disease from all the saturated fats that they're consuming in the dairy, and they get a lot of bile acid production. So the gut is very acidic. So dairy is definitely not to be consumed in our adulthood. It was meant to be for the youth, to fatten up a little baby as soon as possible, and it's not really healthy to consume in adulthood or in children who are probably after age 2 years of age. And if it has to be preferably the consistency of the human milk. For example, a human child should consume their mother's milk, not a cow's or a giraffe's or an elephant's or a lion's milk. Though the consistency of other mammals' milk is designed for their babies, not for humans.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned the gut and the importance of the gut. And there's more and more talk about the gut microbiome. There's so many interesting findings and research being done about the importance of our gut microbiome and as related to our health. Can you talk a little bit about the gut microbiome and why is it important?
Sure. So the gut there are 36 trillion or more organisms living in the intestinal tract from mouth to anus. We used to think of the gut as one long tortuous tube from mouth to anus with a few enzymes that spilled over from the pancreas to digest food. But in the last couple of decades, we have found that there are 36 trillion organisms living in a symbiotic relationship with us in the gut. And they also contribute to digestion, processing of food, vitamin synthesis, and our hormone production, and many, many more functions. So the way it works, the gut microbiome feed on the type of food that you and I consume as an individual. So there are two main types of gut microbiome. There are the bad guys and the good guys. And I always like to simplify things, so we call them the good guys and the bad guys. It's very important to eat healthy, because when you eat healthy, you're feeding the good guys. The good guys, in turn, protect you from illnesses, from diseases, and heal your body, rather than the bad guys who cause inflammation and coronary artery disease and infections and colitis, inflammation of the colon, and much, much more. So what you eat basically feeds the microbiome, and the microbiome in turn returns the favor. And so if you're eating healthy, you get healthier. And if you're eating unhealthy, you become unhealthy.
So, and what types of food are the healthiest for our microbiome? I mean, we hear a lot about things like prebiotics and probiotics. And what is a natural way to sort of nurture our gut microbiome?
Such a good question, Miha. So the one thing, if there's one thing, if people listening today, if they forget everything else I said, just remember, the good guys want one thing, and that is called fiber. So fiber is essential to the health of the gut microbiome. And so if you're eating foods that are full of fiber, you're feeding the good guys, the healthy gut microbiome. On the other hand, if you're eating unhealthy foods, they feed the unhealthy gut microbiome. So I'll just give you a quick example. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds all have fiber. So you want to make sure that you're consuming tons of those plant foods. Foods that don't have any fiber include meat and dairy and eggs. So what most people should do is focus on eating plenty of vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, and legumes, and make sure that they're feeding the good gut microbiome for the betterment of their health.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many interesting things coming up with research right now. And what are some of because there's a lot of controversy when it comes to the gut microbiome as well. What is the role of fat when it comes to our microbiome? I mean, we see all these diets promoting eating high amounts of saturated fat. How do you think our gut microbiome reacts to that?
Oh, another excellent question. They just did a study, I don't know if it was at University of San Francisco or Harvard, but the researchers gave people saturated fat, pure saturated fat, and they saw within 1 to 2 days, these individuals had a switch in the gut microbiome, which went from healthy to completely unhealthy, where they had a growth spurt of the bile-loving gut microbiome. These little guys, they love bile, but the problem with these bile-loving gut microbiome is that they're highly inflammatory and they cause disease in the body. So when they fed people cheese and meat and items that were full of saturated fat, there was a huge spike in the individuals who were consuming this diet within 1 to 2 days. Isn't that incredible? Like, it doesn't take 3 months. It is within 1 to 2 days. Why? Because when you consume saturated fat, not if you're consuming minimal amounts. Plant foods also have a little bit of saturated fat, but when you purify that saturated fat and consume extra, like for example in the ketosis diet where they say, oh yeah, eat a bunch of coconut oil or eat a bunch of meat and dairy, what happens is that saturated fat increases the inflammatory gut microbiome within 1 to 2 days. And that's why I get patients here, they say as soon as I start eating keto, I get joint pains and my gut my gut becomes unhealthy. I start getting a lot of gas, bloating problems, diarrhea, or constipation. I have patients who tell me they go to the steakhouse and they eat one steak and 2 hours later they're in pain. It's very, very predictable. And if you have higher levels of reserve and you're younger, just make sure you know that you won't be home free for too long. So it's important not to follow these fad diets that are going to have detrimental effects several years down the line. So yes, saturated fat, Miha, is detrimental not only for the gut, but if you ask experts around the world like Dr. Khan, who is a cardiologist, he would tell you that it's also terrible for the coronaries. Saturated fat increases cholesterol and it clogs your coronaries. So it's basically purified saturated fat, or any foods high in saturated fat are very unhealthy. And since we're talking about saturated fat, let me talk to you about gastroesophageal reflux disease, which affects 3 out of 5 Americans, right? So it's one of those diseases where I see patients here all the time talking about heartburn, reflux. They can't sleep. They have to prop themselves up on the bed or pillows, and they suffer. And that's why the Nexium and those medications like Zantac and Prozac, those are multi-billion-dollar industry. You see, everyone thinks the problem is acid, but acid belongs in the stomach, right? So what happens is when you eat fat, what happens is that lower esophageal sphincter gets weaker, and that acid comes up into your throat. So avoiding acidic foods like lemons is not going to help. So people tell me, as soon as I eat pizza, I get reflux. And it must be that tomato sauce. And I explain to them, no, it's not the tomato sauce. It's the saturated fat and all that heavy fat in the cheese, right? So I asked them to test it out, and I asked them, okay, go home and eat pasta with marinara sauce. Don't use any oil. And then another day eat the pizza, and you see the difference. And so they become believers because they come back and they're like, right, yeah, the tomato sauce didn't cause any problems with the cheese. So definitely saturated fat is very unhealthy, and any diet that promotes eating a lot of fat is unhealthy.
So interesting, yeah. But just to play devil's advocate for a second. We hear sometimes of people that are following a ketogenic diet and are saying all these great things, talking about all these benefits of ketosis, and sometimes it's really puzzling to me. I mean, is it just they're experiencing these benefits? Is it because usually they're transitioning from a very unhealthy diet, let's say a standard American diet, to a ketogenic diet, which, as unhealthy as it is, they might be including more whole foods and more plants into it? Is it that one reason, or are there other reasons, or also is it because they just didn't have enough time to develop the diseases connected to eating this way?
That's a very good question. The studies showed that the ketogenic diet basically only dropped people's hemoglobin A1C by 1%. And that's probably because people were eating the standard American diet and tons of pure sugar and refined sugars, and they stopped consuming all that junk and they got a little bit of benefit, right? But it's by no means is it a healthy diet. And basically there is no studies, long-term studies to show benefits. And so I think you're right in that some people, when they start ketosis diets, what they're doing is they're avoiding the refined sugary muffins and the cookies and the pastries. And of course, that gives them some benefit. Furthermore, some people brag that, well, when they went on the keto diet, they lost weight. Well, what happens is when you go on a keto diet, you're eating a lot of unhealthy fats. But what you're also doing is you're dropping about 50% of your calories that you used to consume that came from either good carbs or bad carbs, doesn't matter. So in the short term, you could perhaps lose a lot of water weight, glycogen storage in the muscles go down, and you could perhaps burn some fat as fuel. But I just don't see how this could be a lifestyle type of nutrition for anyone. It is a quick fix for possible detrimental effects in the future. I have a patient who developed diabetes while on the ketosis diet, and that's just because he was consuming a lot of saturated fat. And in the short term, he lost some weight and his diabetes got better. But what happened is because of the saturated fat, his insulin receptors got screwed up, for lack of a better term. And the scientific way of explaining that is saturated fat goes inside the muscle cells and basically paralyzes the glucose transporter systems. So in the long run, he developed diabetes. So perhaps it's not a good diet for most people. And I would say that it's best if someone wants to lose weight or improve their diabetes, or for whatever other reasons they want to go on a diet. I think it should be something that is more of a lifestyle change, not a quick fix. These fad diets are bound to cause problems down the line as far as health is concerned. I can tell you, besides the risk of diabetes, there is also a risk of completely destroying the good gut microbiome and introducing your body to basically, or increasing the risk of the inflammatory gut microbiome in your gut, where the bile-loving gut microbiome become the preponderance of the population. And they flag down these T helper cells. In English, they're white cells that attack. And so when the bile-loving gut microbiome go up, they flag down these cells that attack the colon, and you could potentially down the line get colitis and inflammation everywhere in your body, including your joints. So I do want to warn people in this regard and encourage everyone to look into a plant-based diet, which is a better, I would say, as a lifestyle change, because quick fixes never work.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get into a lot of detail as far as the ketogenic diet on the Diet Fiction documentary that's coming up on January 1st. And I think it's really important to bring more awareness to people about some of these fad diets, because yes, they might work on the short term, help you lose some weight and help with some biomarkers in the beginning. But from my own research and interviews that I've done with different experts and including yourself, it seems like when you look at the long term and you look at things like all-cause mortality, people that are consuming these diets that are high in saturated fat just tend to die quicker and die of more health diseases, right?
That is absolutely correct. There was a study about that in regards to the all-cause mortality in these low-carbs diet. But I do want to emphasize on the fact that, to your listeners, that the carbohydrates that you and I are speaking about right now are whole food carbohydrates. So I want everyone to think of carbs as basically sugars that are purified sugars or refined sugars versus whole foods and plants. So if you want to, basically, when you want to eat healthy, you think about whole foods. Anything that has fiber attached to it is a good carbohydrate. So we're not here telling you go eat lattes with 60 grams of sugar in the morning at Starbucks, or go eat those muffins and you're going to be fine. By carbohydrates, we're talking about fiber-rich carbs like legumes, vegetables, fruits, and basically any carbohydrate that is fiber rich. And the fiber controls the glycemic index or glycemic load in the blood, which is not the same effect as a pure sugar like table sugar that spikes your glucose and insulin.
Hey guys, just to take a quick break here, I hope you're enjoying the show. Just a reminder, if you would like to support us, you can click on our Patreon link below, where you can donate just $1 per episode, or click on our Amazon affiliate link, so we can get some pocket change to help cover our costs and keep the show growing. This episode is brought to you by the Food Choices Academy, an online platform that offers several amazing courses on plant-based nutrition. Our main course, the Food Choices Plan for Healthy Eating and Living, is a great value. It's a high-level production video course with Dr. Pam Popper, where she covers everything you need to know about plant-based nutrition to help you achieve your goals. If you want to check it out, just go to foodchoicesacademy.com. And for my listeners, I'm offering a 15% discount on all courses. Just type in the coupon code podcast at checkout. You know, there's a lot of people focusing a lot on probiotics and prebiotics, which I think, I mean, from at least from what I've seen, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of negative things associated with it, of consuming probiotics and prebiotics. But what I have been seeing is that a lot of people focus just on that. They don't tackle the main thing, which is their diet, changing their diet, and they think that probiotics and prebiotics are going to solve the problem. And there's a lot of people making a lot of money promoting these products as the solution to all of people's problems. What is your opinion about these products?
Oh, it's so true, Michal. People come tell me, oh, the vegan diet is expensive, which is not, but anyway, but then they're literally paying $80 a bottle for a probiotic at the store, which is basically not helping them at all. It's hurting their pocketbook and not giving them any health benefits. I always tell patients, if you are for most people who are taking probiotics, it's like sprinkling sand on the beach. You know, if you're not eating healthy and your gut microbiome is unhealthy, there is nothing you can do with probiotics. Probiotics are not going to help you. So let me define probiotics and prebiotics. Probiotics are these organisms that are in a capsule sold over the counter. That's a probiotic. It's basically put in a bottle by the supplement companies and sold to you. And you read the direction. It says, take these probiotics 1 to 2 pills in the morning, whatever. You take those pills. These are probiotics. They're organisms that are inside the capsule. Some of them are heat sensitive, so they die out. I don't know how long they were sitting on the shelf. Who knows? By the time they get to you, probably a few billion of them are dead. And then you swallow those. It goes into the stomach and it mixes up with stomach acid. And stomach acid is supposed to kill and destroy any bacteria that enters your stomach. Okay, so some more is gone right there. How many of them end up in your bowel? Well, no one really knows exactly. And so let's just say you're eating a bad diet. Okay, so now when you swallow all that bad diet, you know, all that food that goes into the gut and acidifies your gut, you are killing all the good gut microbiome and you're feeding the bad gut microbiome. Okay, so let's see. How much help was that few thousand or millions of gut bacteria that you swallowed? Probably not good enough. You're still going to continue being ill. Now, there are prebiotics. Prebiotics are basically food that you feed the gut microbiome and let them thrive in their own natural habitat. So, for example, you eat a piece of fruit or a vegetable. That is a prebiotic. So fiber is a prebiotic. It feeds the good guys, and the good guys can propagate and grow in their natural habitat, because the stomach acid doesn't kill the fiber, right? The fiber travels in your intestine and it basically feeds the gut microbiome where they're living. And so that is probably the most efficient way of guaranteeing that you're feeding the good gut microbiome. And by avoiding junk food, you're disallowing the bad gut microbiome from propagating and living. So again, if you're eating a bad diet, the probiotics are not helping you. The only reason I would suggest anyone to take probiotics is if they're on heavy doses of antibiotic, and in combination with the probiotics, that could be a little bit helpful in disallowing the complete eradication of your gut microbiome. Or if they have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, because they really need any help that they can get. But otherwise, I would encourage everyone to go into their cupboards and take out their probiotics and throw them in the trash can.
Yeah, and the probiotics, they're just temporary helpers, right? They don't last very long in our gut, right? They're different from the natural probiotics, the natural bacteria from our microbiome that's in our gut, right?
Oh yeah, and there are trillions and trillions of gut microbiome, and the supplement makers, they just pick 3 of them or 4 of them that they put in the bottle. I mean, okay, is that really helping? I mean, no one really knows for a healthy individual if this is even helpful or maybe even hurtful. We don't know.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. I just sat through a sales video that popped up on my screen one day when I was browsing the internet, and I won't name the author, but it's basically this guy created this very smart, from a marketing perspective, sales video, and I mean, he was promoting a prebiotic/probiotic product, and he talks about how he found the problem, the big problem, what's causing disease in humanity, and it's tomatoes and beans. And then he goes about talking about how his pseudoscience on how this is causing all the problems, and at the end of the day, the solution is buy his $80 bottle of prebiotics, and that's gonna solve all your problems. It makes me really mad when I see those kind of things, but it's good because it motivates me to keep making films and creating podcasts and books and all that, because there's so much misinformation out there that's it's crazy.
People need unbiased information. You're correct. The supplement industry will always say, "Oh, we have the magic pill," and this, in this case, that's very aggravating that he's giving bad advice, because he's saying not only is he not selling his supplements, overpriced supplements that won't work, he's actually encouraging people to stop eating good foods like tomatoes and beans, which would be so life-saving in most people. And I mean, literally, 50% of my diet is beans and tomatoes. I don't even go one day in my life without eating beans and tomatoes. It's that important to eat beans and tomatoes. So it makes me very upset that he would actually make a video and publicize that bad information.
Yeah, they're giving so much bad press to beans. They're talking about the issue with lectins and how lectins are connected to all these problems. But, it's very easy to get rid of lectins. You just cook the beans. I don't see anybody eating raw beans, and lectins are not only present in beans, they're present in many other plant foods. So you essentially would have to eat a diet consistent of just meat and fat and cheese to not have any lectins, right?
Absolutely. Lectins are ubiquitous. And, another thing is I believe that a certain amount of lectins are necessary for the human body, and there's more research required to prove this. But my theory is that some of these lectins kill cancer cells in the gut. So that's why some pharmaceutical companies are making purifying lectins and use it as chemotherapy, because it does target some cancer cells.
Interesting. I didn't know about that.
Dr. Michael Greger has an awesome video on this. So if you're listening and you're interested, type in lectins on nutritionfacts.org, and he made an awesome video about this.
Yeah, definitely. I always tell everybody, that's one of my go-to resources. It's Dr. Michael Greger's website, nutritionfacts.org, and I'll put the link on the show notes below for those of you that are not familiar with it. But it's such an amazing resource. Any issue that you want to find out about, I mean, he has literally thousands of videos, and what he does, he just it's a non-for-profit, and essentially has this team of researchers that just go through thousands of scientific papers each year about a variety of topics, and they sort of digest the raw data into 5-minute videos about specific topics that are very easy to understand for people that don't have a scientific background, and really it's fun, it's entertaining, and you get a ton of knowledge. So check it out, nutritionfacts.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Angie, what are some of the biggest myths out there that make you sort of the angriest about the myths related to diet and weight loss? What sort of like keeps you up at night, angry about these things?
The fact that there's myths within myths. I mean, at first, for example, we had the myth that soy is bad for you because it has estrogens. Okay, let's keep the record straight. Soy doesn't have estrogen. It has something called phytoestrogen, which is actually good for human consumption. And then there was a myth within the myth, and that was, I've been reading this lately on people's posts, and my followers send me all these posts. Look at what this guy said. People are actually posting that soy decreases your testosterone. It's like, whoa, wait a minute now. First, I had to deal with clarifying the fact that soy doesn't have estrogen, and now I have to clarify the fact that soy doesn't decrease your testosterone. So that's what probably the most aggravating thing is, people who are fitness competitors and it's bro science floating around. Now, don't get me wrong. There are also some amazing people out there, fitness competitors, who are very well read and evidence-based, and they will go and give good advice, and they have nutrition degrees. I know a few people like Nimai Delgado, Tatiana Poliz, my close friends, who are amazingly well-read, and they give good advice. But you have to be careful who you listen to. And if you're following some Instagram dude who looks good, number one, doesn't mean he's healthy inside. And number two, does not mean the information that he's providing is legit. And number three, those muscles don't always come from eating good food. These guys are often injecting growth hormone and steroids, and their life expectancy is not very great. Those types of things, unfortunately, people look at someone's outside, they aesthetically look good, so they assume that they're healthy, and that probably makes me really angry.
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell my friends and family, it's, look at the big picture. I mean, don't just fall for the next fad diet. Like you said, you find someone on Instagram that looks good and is sharing about what they eat. I mean, that's not necessarily evidence-based, and that doesn't really mean anything. So sometimes we just have to get out of our comfort zone and dig a little deeper into the research, and that might mean, doing some research about the science, and I always recommend people, like I said, going to Dr. Michael Greger's website, read a book called The China Study, watch some plant-based documentaries out there, and just start getting the bigger picture, and not looking at just individual things or people that are promoting certain things, but assume that everyone is lying, and just go and do your own research, and dig a little deeper than just a basic Google search, because it's very easy to be deceived by a lot of the pseudoscience out there, or even actual science, because there's a lot of research that are saying that a lot of the things that you and I talk about are not true. But when you look at the preponderance of evidence, that's what really matters, because you might look, for example, I always encourage looking at meta-analysis studies on certain issues, because what they do, they take a certain problem, let's say, does consumption of milk does what's the effect on that on bone density. And then if you look at you will find some studies, most of them sponsored by the dairy industry, that
Right.
show a positive or very slightly positive or neutral effect on bone density. But if you look at the preponderance, which is, I believe last time I checked, over 80% of the studies show that there's a detrimental effect on bone density from consuming large amounts of dairy. So don't focus on individual studies, but look at the preponderance of evidence, of scientific evidence on those topics.
And make sure it's not funded by a certain company. For example, if I were going to do a study about Dr. Sideghi is the world's greatest GI doctor, okay? And it was funded by me, don't listen to it. It's very simple. You've got to basically do studies, proper studies that they're not biased, statistically significant. And so I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I can tell you the meat and dairy industry does that a lot. They fund a lot of research, and they misinterpret results. The egg industry did that in regards to cholesterol. I can tell you that they took people with already high cholesterol and they basically fed them cholesterol, and they said, see, eating more cholesterol doesn't increase your cholesterol. Well, yes, it does. If you take someone like me who's healthy, who doesn't have already high cholesterol, and you feed me cholesterol, my cholesterol would go up. So you have to be careful with tricks like that. And so that's why you and I recommend people to read non-biased books like How Not to Diet, like the China study. None of these authors are trying to get anything out of it. It's just basically educating the public. They don't have any they don't own the egg industry. They don't own the dairy industry. You know, they don't own broccoli farms. You know, they're just trying to talk about the truth.
Absolutely. And just to, you mentioned cholesterol there, and if we could touch on that briefly, because I think there's a growing movement which is related to the saturated fat movement, talking about, the benefits of cholesterol, that cholesterol is not as bad as people think, and all that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So it is basically an agreement that all the societies, all the experts in the world will tell you, well, the ones who are well read, who have read the literature, cholesterol is linked to coronary artery disease, and eating saturated fat causes an increase in the cholesterol. So when you eat, for example, coconut oil, or if you eat, for example, basically butter, that saturated fat increases your cholesterol, and that clogs your arteries. So there were some studies done that were skewed and misinterpreted, and so Time magazine came out with that, the picture of bacon, and it was basically a bad study, and it just went all over and got so much national attention. And so since then, people have misunderstood that saturated fat and cholesterol is not bad for you, which it couldn't be farther from the truth. I talked to the ex-president of American Heart Association, Dr. Williams, and he said that since that study came out, he and his team has worked so hard to take away that poor or misunderstood information. But it will take time, because it went ubiquitous all over the internet. People started writing about it, and it's going to take time to basically set the record straight. But in the meanwhile, people who are listening today, be careful. Do not increase your saturated fat and cholesterol, because it is bad for your cardiovascular health and for your gastrointestinal system as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have to keep doing what we're doing, keep informing people, because the other guys, unfortunately, I think they still have a lot more power than we do, a lot more influence. So I think, people we need to keep doing this work and educating people like you do, and creating podcasts and films, because it's a tough battle out there, I think.
Absolutely. I always tell people, like, I can't compete with people like Dr. Axe, who are backed up by a multi-billion-dollar supplement industry. For example, he'll like sell his collagen supplements, and he will have a couple of $1 million pumped into search engine optimization. And here I am trying to tell the truth, and I don't have millions of dollars worth of search engine optimization. So, unfortunately, the bad news gets out because it's backed by supplement industries who are making billions of dollars, right? So try not to get knowledge from the supplement industries as far as what's good and what's bad. So, look at the product and ask yourself, who is a non-biased person that I could talk to give me more information. So the supplement industry is pretending like, for example, if you eat collagen, it goes straight into your joints and straight into your cheeks and build up collagen and takes away signs of aging and your joints are going to be okay. But, all of that goes into the digestive tract and gets broken down into its subunits. So it's nothing you can't get from other foods. But you see, they make collagen seem like the magical thing. So be careful with advertising. Be careful with these supplement companies. Dr. Axe is literally trying to sell a supplement. He doesn't care about your health. He's just trying to sell a supplement.
Yeah, the whole bone collagen and bone broth movement. I mean, that makes me really angry. I mean, it's so much misinformation. But like you said, it's all about the money. They just care. They care about making money. They don't care about the end user necessarily. So.
Right.
But Angie, tell us what's next for you. What are you working on, and how can people get in touch with you, follow your work, and
I'm writing a book, and the book should be available hopefully next year. I've worked very hard on this book for the past 3 years. I kept changing it, and I think, I've decided to make it a little bit less scientific because a lot of people tell me what they like about me is that it's I chew the information and spit it out in such an easy way to understand. So, I know there are so many amazing books out there already, which are very, heavy science. And so I decided to take an approach where it's a very simple to understand book, 150 pages long or maybe 200 pages long. So anyway, I kept changing it. So it's taken me a long time to come out with it. But I think once it's out, it'll be a very, very good read, and it'd be an awesome gift to mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, cousins who desperately need to go plant-based. It's about fitness, hormone optimization, and eating plant-based diet, which is anti-aging, and it's health promoting, and God, I can't stop talking about that. As you know, I'm preaching to the choir at this point. What else is going on is, your documentary, Diet Fiction, is coming out in January, and I'm excited for the launch because I want people to see it. There were quite a few clips of me speaking about about diets in general, about the plant-based nutrition, and I think, and many other experts. I think that this documentary is going to be an awesome documentary, one of the best ever made. So I encourage people to look me up. Can you tell us where it's going to be available in January?
Yeah, so we're starting our distribution cycle with all of the streaming platforms. So it will be in 20 to 25 different streaming platforms, from Amazon, iTunes, Vimeo, all the big ones. And then after that initial cycle, then we'll go into the subscription platforms. We'll be pitching Hulu and Netflix and all of the others. So initially it will be very widely distributed. So and we'll be promoting all the different platforms to people. But yeah, all the big ones.
I've been bragging to my patients, family, and friends for a long time. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but we're almost there. January 1st, it's the big launch date. So yes, I'm excited about it as well, and grateful to you for participating in the film also.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Oh, and people can look me up on Instagram, Angie.Sadeghi, ANGIE.SADEGHI. I'm pretty constantly on Instagram, pretty active on Instagram.
Sounds great. Yeah, and we'll put some links to your websites and your Instagram on the show notes, and keep us posted on your book. Once it comes out, we'll have you come back to the show and talk about it. I'm really curious to read it and find out more about it.
Oh, I'm excited. I would love to.
Sounds great. Well, Angie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming to the show. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Miha.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. Take care.